Hello, people of YouTube. So, one thing that I'd like to start off with this is talking a little bit about public speaking, stress, and pressure, and things like that, because these are things that I don't really have any issues with. I mean, obviously, I'm making videos on YouTube. I clearly don't have very much of a problem with public speaking, but even aside from that, my glorious wall that you guys, well, one of you, can't see is covered with posters from whenever I used to do theater back in high school. So, I've never really had an issue with things like public speaking. And even whenever I first got to college, one of the first assignments that they had us do, I feel like this jazz is a little bit too loud. Okay, that should be better. One of the first assignments that they had us do was to give a presentation to a group that we were all, it was an entire class thing. Like, if you were in this class, the first thing that you did was give a presentation to your specific group. So they wanted you to feel like, they wanted you to get an idea of what it's like to give a presentation, which is something that I didn't have any issues with. I think I got like a 90 something on that presentation. So what I would like to say is that there are two different ways that you can tackle public speaking. You can either wing it, which is something that I tend to do, or you can be very meticulous and plan out every step of the way. Now, both have their pros and cons. Winging it, the obvious con is that if you get to a point where you don't know what to say, you just kind of sit there like, this is my presentation, and that can be a problem. So a way to counter that is to write out like an outline and use it to follow and just have like basic points to hit. That was how I did my presentation. Was I had like 7 slides that I knew each slide had maybe 3 or 4 points that I wanted to hit. So I would set up like, oh yeah, I want to talk about this, but to get there, I might talk about something else a little bit along the way. Now the other way is to meticulously plan it. That's something that I don't normally do because I think it takes too much time. I don't think you really need to spend too much time working on a good presentation. I think that in the moment, this is probably just for me, anyways, but I feel like in the moment you can come up with something better than normally you come up with that you sit down and spend so long thinking about. Because even whenever I meticulously plan, in the moment, I end up coming up with brand new stuff that I never thought about before. So I feel like that's a good way to go if you don't have very much confidence in your ability as a public speaker. It's a good idea to plan out exactly what you want to say, exactly how you want to say it, and have exact notes, blah, 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 blah. And then I feel like eventually, whenever you start winging it, because whenever you wing it, you run the risk of course, being like, what do I say? So you do need to be careful about that. And along the lines of public speaking is pressure and stress. Because a lot of people, the reason why they have trouble winging it is because they freeze up. And they freeze up because whenever they're giving their presentation, they think like, oh man, all these people are watching me. And then they just kind of fall apart. I'm sure you've seen bad presentations. They're not good. Well, you wouldn't call them bad if they were good, right? But so like, what am I trying to say here? um, the thing that I find about pressure is that I've never had issues with it because I couldn't care less about what other people think about me. Again, that has its pros and cons. It tends to mean that, one of the cons is that it tends to mean that whenever I am doing a public speaking thing, I don't care what they think about me, which means I'll be as ridiculous as I want because I don't care. And then I maybe take it a bit too far, and then it really does have repercussions. Or whenever and this goes into stress, even whenever I'm studying for a test, I'll just be like, who cares? And while that's good because it keeps me from like I don't know losing sleep or getting sick from being so stressed out, it tends to mean that I don't study as much as I probably should. And then whenever the test rolls around, I get a worse grade on it because I was just like, whatever. But also, I find that whereas most people tend to complain like, "Oh man, this is so hard, so ridiculous," blah 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 blah. I'm always just like, who cares? What will be will be. Just roll with the punches, mate. And, I find that I've enjoyed that manner of living. I understand that it's probably not for everybody, but regardless, um, what was I talking about? Oh, yeah. Regardless, I feel like it's definitely a good outlook to have at times. There are definitely times whenever you just want to be able to say, like, oh man, that's whatever, who cares? But there are also times when you should sit down and look in the mirror, look deep into your webcam, and say, "All right, I need to fix this." Well, an example of that is whenever you may do bad on a test. Obviously, I'm in college, so I'm taking testing quizzes like nobody's business. Like, like this little thing. Got a 65. Does that come up? Is that backwards? Probably. There's that fixed. I don't know. Um, yeah, why doesn't that look right? There we go. 65. Um, well, I guess it's because of the way that it works. Okay, anyways, I just figured out how webcams work. Aren't I a genius? 65 out of 110. That calculates to an A minus. Right there. The A minus. Um, that's decent. I mean, you might also be wondering, 65 out of 110, that's an A minus? It was curved out the wazoo because that was basically an average. That was one of the higher scores, even. Look, my buddy's playing XCOM. Anyways, I didn't prepare for that test at all. I maybe looked over a couple of problems. I probably didn't even do that. I wrote down like a formula sheet, and that was it. That was all. I considered that my big hoorah, my big study. And I got an A minus on it. I'm getting back a math exam tomorrow that I didn't really study for at all. Probably a similar grade, high B, low A is what I'm really expecting. But the thing is that I didn't stress out over those, and I'm doing all right because my people have always described me as having innate abilities and things, and as I've gotten older, I've kind of seen it a couple times. Like I can, like that for example, I can just take someone that I know really well, and I can just say, I can reproduce this easy, and then I get an A minus on the exam. But people that do stress out, they do tend to get better grades. Well, okay, maybe that's not even true. Because I do have a buddy who's not doing very good in calc, um, and he's been studying quite a bit to an extent. He's also the guy that's playing XCOM right now, so he plays a lot of video games too. But the point is that sometimes there are points where whenever you're doing the work and you're studying, you just can't perform all the time. And you, take all this as you want. I don't know what I'm even talking about. I'm just waffling on and on because I feel like it. Um, just be careful, really. Uh, a message to anybody in school: you really should study because if you're in high school and you plan on going to college, trust me, having good study habits is very, very useful. Part of the reason why I don't study is because in high school I could just coast through everything, and even in my senior year, there were still tests where I could just blow off and do pretty well on them. But then you get to college and it's just not the case anymore. And it can really hurt you not having good study habits. It definitely hurt me in my first semester, trust me. But yeah, so having good study habits is very good. And even further than that, having good study habits is good. Having a good work ethic is even better because when you have a good work ethic, you're willing to sit down and do the work that you need to do. Which is one thing that I've noticed about myself is that I tend to have a good work ethic whenever it's not school. Like a couple summers, I volunteered to help paint houses for my church, and every time, everyone's always like, "Oh man, you're such a hard worker," blah 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 blah. Um, but that's because whenever I'm actually doing work outside of school, I always feel like I'm producing it for someone and that I want to meet their expectations. Unfortunately, I don't feel the same way about school, even though everyone always tells me, like, oh, yeah, you're just trying to meet the expectations of your teachers or whatever. But what are you going to do? So, I guess the moral of the story is um, just be careful, you know? Definitely plan stuff out, definitely study. Um, but don't get too wrapped up in things. Because there's a lot more to life than just tests or presentations or anything, even. That doesn't make any sense. There's a lot more to life than anything. Hmm. Maybe I've created a new philosophy. There's a lot more to life than anything. What am I even saying anymore? I guess what I'm trying to say is that there's a lot more to life than most of the things that you stress out about. Like, um, one thing that I would say that is something that people should always, well, always, something that people should strive to do whenever they're an adult is to get married, have children. Um, that's one thing that I found is that I definitely like making people laugh. So I think that that matters a lot to me in life. So one thing that I would like to do is have a wife that I could make laugh all the time and have kids that thought I was funny as well. And so I would say that that would be one of the penultimate or even the ultimate thing to strive for. Definitely not. Um, Definitely focusing your life around things like schoolwork and things like that. I know this looks a little off. Huh. Is not always the best idea. It's a good idea most of the times because it is kind of like this is the important thing at the time. But don't kill yourself over it. I mean, like I said, just be careful. Don't freak out. And if you're in school, you have so much of your life ahead of you that it's ridiculous to even start to become a little bit freaked out by the problems and challenges that school presents you with because they're training you for what the rest of your life is going to be like. So if you think that school is too much, settle down, bro, because you got quite the wake up call. So yeah, moral of the story: don't freak out, stay calm, don't panic, as Hitchhiker's Guide will tell you, and I'll catch you on the flip side.